Sweet in the morning, oh Lord, it's sweet in the morning. This is an interview with Miss Danella Jones Bryant for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley. We're at Miles College, June 23rd, 1995. Ms. Bryant, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and sit with us today. What I want to do initially is just to start talking about your background. Tell me just a bit about your parents. Where were they from? Were they from Jefferson County?
My mom was born in Andalusia, Alabama. My dad was born, I think, in Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Okay.
And they moved to Birmingham.
Were you born in Birmingham?
Oh, yes, I was born in Birmingham.
Okay, you were born in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
What about your parents' education and occupation?
Okay. My mom, she only had an 8th grade education. My mom worked as in domestics. She worked as a maid, if you will, housekeeper at one of the local hospitals in Birmingham.
Okay, which hospital?
It was South Highland.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And your father?
My father was self-employed. He owned his own business. He made and repaired hats, men hats. He had always been in that line of business.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what was his business called?
Dan the Hatter.
Dan the Hatter,
Mm-hmm.
a very well-known person.
Oh,
in
yes,
Birmingham.
yes.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Oh, yes. I have a younger brother, and I have a half-sister.
Mm-hmm. So it was 3 of you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Tell me a bit about your education.
Okay. I went to Lincoln Elementary School, Parker High School. I graduated in '64. And after graduating, I moved to Los Angeles. I attended Los Angeles City College as well as University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, as it's better known. But I didn't graduate. I came back to Birmingham, and I have a degree in word processing as a word processing specialist from the Southern Institute here in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you in the Birmingham school system, and you finished at Parker. You were one of the Thundering Herd.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Tell me just a bit about Parker. What do you remember about Parker High School as a student?
Well, other than it was a great high school, well, I had some great teachers. I remember one in particular. Her name was MC Handy. I was having a little problem with math. I didn't think I was a very good math teacher, and she changed my mind about that. She was my Algebra 1 teacher, and I came out of it with a B+, so I felt pretty good about that.
What about relationships? What about other students?
Oh, I intermingled with all the kids. I was pretty popular. I was a cheerleader, and I was president of the French club. Couldn't speak very much French, though, but I did that. I traveled with the football team when we played games and things. So I was pretty active. I was very open, very outgoing person. I always have been. Mm-hmm.
What community did you live in?
I lived in the Smithfield area. I was raised up in the Smithfield area.
Can you describe what your community was like at that time?
Well, it was a close-knit community. Everyone kind of looked out for one another. You know, if you saw somebody's child doing something he shouldn't have been, then he got in trouble, then he got a spanking for it. Not like these days, you know. We kind of, we were close-knit. Everybody was close-knit and cared about one another. And we had similar goals. It was a good community.
Well, growing up in Birmingham, were there ever any instances that you remember that really made you know that you did not have all of the rights and privileges that other citizens had?
Oh, yes.
Can you elaborate on one or two of those?
Well, I remember one incident. It sticks out of my mind very well. I was coming home from school one day with some of my girlfriends, and we were walking, and this pickup truck passed by. I believe it was in my junior year, and it was three guys, white guys, in the pickup truck, and they yelled out at us,
What did they yell?
"Hey, you niggas go home." I was pretty upset, and I was really hurt about it, and so when I got home, I talked to my parents about it. And they basically just told me that they're just ignorant and don't worry about it. They don't really realize what they're doing, don't worry about that. But it kind of stuck in my mind. It made me realize things were not right in Birmingham.
Were there any other incidents that you may remember? Do you remember riding the bus? Do you remember going downtown to any of the theaters?
Oh, yeah. I remember every time I got on the bus, if it was crowded in the back and it was seats in the front, I had to stand up, and I never liked that. I felt that was unfair. I remember not understanding why I couldn't go to the Alabama theater, because it was a nice theater. I had to go to the Lyric and sit upstairs where there was rats and roaches and everything. I remembered that, and I didn't like it.
Well, it appears then that you had at an early age decided there were things that you did not like. By the time the movement came around, it appeared that you probably had already made some decisions about what you wanted out of life.
Oh, yes.
How then did you get involved in the movement? What was the circumstances you were getting involved in the movement?
Well, I think how I first got involved in the movement was my uncle, God rest his soul, Jimmy Walker. He was very active in churches, and he was a Christian man. He first told me about the meetings, the mass meetings that were in town and what was going on. And of course, I've always been curious, and I decided to go, and I did. And I never will forget it. I was just spellbound. I felt like this was the answer to my prayer. I couldn't believe it. Oh my goodness. I tried to be there every night.
Now you were, 14, 15 years old at the time?
I was pretty young. Yeah.
But you felt that this was what you had been waiting for.
It was the answer to my prayer,
So
really.
then you started going to the mass meetings. Can you describe what a typical mass meeting was like?
Well, to me, the mass meetings were where people got together and they talked about getting their rights, being able to do the things that they couldn't do, and in a nonviolent way. And what really impressed me, because I wasn't into violence, it was God was involved. We always had prayer. We always held hands, and it was like we were a family with one common goal. And so that's basically what it was. We Shall Overcome. It's a song I won't ever forget.
Can you tell me what was the relationship between your community and the police department? Did you ever have any instance of being accosted by the police?
Oh, yes. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, it was during the time that Reverend Shuttlesworth House was bombed. An acquaintance of mine and I were out riding. It was late in the evening. It wasn't that very late. The police came out of nowhere and stopped us. And he came around to the driver's side and asked my friend for his driver's license, and he showed it to him. And he was saying something nasty to him and told him to get out of the car and that he was going to arrest him. By this time, I had gotten out of the car. And I asked him, I said, "Sir, why are you arresting him? What have you done? We didn't run a red light. We didn't do anything." And so he pushed me to the ground. I had a hat on. And I think I had some jeans and a shirt or a sweater or something on. And he put the gun to my head and he said, "I could blow your brains out and no one would even care." And as soon as he said that, he snatched my hat off and my hair fell down to my shoulders. And he looked to his partner and he said, "Oh, this is a nigger bitch." So then he told me to get up and run and don't look back. He said, "I mean, you better not look back." And that's exactly what I did. I was
Where
scared.
did you run to?
I ran to one of the apartments. The first apartment I saw, I knocked on the door. It was an older lady. She was very sweet. She opened the door and I explained to her what happened and she let me in and hugged me. Then I called my mother and I told my mom what happened. She was real upset. So the lady and my mother decided that I should spend the night there, and my dad picked me up the next morning.
Did you know the lady?
I didn't know her person, but she knew our family. And at that time, things were, you could do that, yeah.
During the movement, you participated in demonstrations.
Oh, yes.
You also was a student leader at Parker.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you assisted in attracting other students to the movement.
Yes.
Can you tell me something about that?
Well, I would go to my school. I was a senior, and I would go to my school and try and recruit, kids, especially in my classroom or in the club that I was involved in, the cheerleaders, or just any of the kids. Tried to explain to them what was going on, and that I wanted, that they needed to join us. I did it on several occasions. I did it. And I did recruit some. It wasn't a great deal, but I did, because they were kind of scared.
During May of '63, when organizers were going to the various schools to entice students to leave school and go and get involved in the movement at some 16th Street, were you involved in that?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How did that operate? Did you leave school during that time yourself?
Oh, yeah, on many occasions. My parents were afraid I wasn't going to graduate because I did that, but I was a good student, and I did graduate.
But you were actively involved in
And very
attracting.
actively involved, very.
In fact, you were a junior member of the organization also.
Oh, yes, junior staff member.
Staff member. Tell me
Well,
about
we would
that.
have what you call strategy meetings, and this would consist of how we would plan, when we were going to march, where we were going to march, how many of us, who's going to be our partners, and that type of thing, and that's basically what that was.
Did you ever go to jail?
Oh, yes, yes.
Do you remember the first time that you went to jail?
The first time I went to jail, if I'm not mistaken, I think if you're over 16, you go to jail, okay? But at that time, I was over 16. And, but I said that I was under 16 because I didn't want to go to jail. I went to, I think they call it juvenile. And I remember this, that's when I made up my mind also that I would never do anything wrong. I remember this big old matronly lady that was screaming and hollering at us and telling us if we don't get in the bed and shut up what she was going to do to us. It wasn't a very, very nice experience, but I didn't mind it at the time. I really didn't, because it was for a good cause.
Why were you arrested?
Just for marching.
So you were marching and you were arrested along with several other people.
Oh, yes.
Were you taken to juvenile in a paddy wagon,
Oh,
police
yes.
car?
Paddy wagon, just like regular people that get arrested in a paddy wagon, a bunch of us.
What else do you remember about being in juvenile detention?
Except that it was overcrowded, the food was horrible, and I knew that I never wanted to go there if I didn't have to, for something. I knew I never wanted to do anything wrong, I knew they were going to get me out,
Yeah.
if I wanted to. But I always stayed. Some of the kids, didn't want to stay very long, but I always stayed until they got me out.
How long did you stay?
Well, the first time I think I stayed about a week. And one time I stayed 2 weeks. Now, when I was the last time I went, I think I stayed about a week.
What were the other circumstances of your arrest? You say you were arrested 2 or 3 times.
Well, it was basically the same. It was always for marching, and they decided that they wanted to take some blacks to jail, or niggers as they called them.
Did you always go to the juvenile detention?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You were never housed in the
Jail, no.
Okay. You were also arrested in St. Petersburg, Florida.
St. Augustine.
I'm sorry, St. Augustine. Why? What were you doing in St. Augustine?
We were marching down there trying to recruit and get, kids involved in our movement, and we got arrested down there.
What was that experience like?
The same. It was it was a jail. I didn't like it, but it was for a good cause, and I was willing to do whatever it took so, for us to succeed in what we were trying to do.
You, of course, were closely associated then with some of the people that would be household names.
Oh, yes, yes.
Can you tell us about any of those individuals?
Okay, well, James Bevells. James Bevells was basically the person that did the recruiting of all the younger kids. He was like, we had our own mass meeting, and the adults had their own mass meeting. Of course, we had them together also. And so did Andrew Young. He worked along with James Bevells. I remember him distinctly because he's the one that, really recruited me. Mm-hmm.
Bevells did, Young. Did you have the opportunity to actually meet and talk with Dr. King?
No, I didn't actually talk with him personally. I had been in the same meetings with him. I saw him, but no, I didn't actually speak with him one-on-one, no.
You also attended the March on Washington.
Oh, yes, I did. Very proud of that.
You were very active as a young person at that
Oh,
time.
yes. Oh,
Tell me
yeah.
about that experience.
Oh, that was an experience. Well, we had decided in the meeting that, they had said that we were going to go to take it to the Capitol. And it had been planned for like months and months. And the bus trip was only $8. Can you believe it? So my parents got the money up, and we went, a whole bunch of us. And it was something I will never forget. I have never seen that many people in one place in my entire life for one cause. Everybody was there for the same thing. It was a beautiful experience. I enjoyed it. Even now, when I see it being televised sometime on TV, it brings back memories. It makes, I remember it distinctly. Yeah.
In talking with a number of other young people, some people who attended Ullman or attended Parker, one particular individual suggested that she remembered the day of one of the demonstrations, a massive demonstration, where she initially went towards school, but she didn't quite get to school because there were others who were recruiting and telling them to come on to the church. Did you have that kind of experience, or were you one of those that were in school and left school, or did you make
Both.
any detours?
Both.
You did both. Okay.
Oh,
What did
yes.
what were your parents saying as a result of your
Well,
activity?
my mother was a little worried about me not graduating, but then she knew I had made good grades and everything, and she knew I was really involved, and she didn't really make a real big fuss about it, because it was something that I was committed to do, and it was a good thing.
Well, were there others that were close to you, close friends of yours, that was as actively involved as you were?
There were 3 young ladies that I particularly hung out with that I tried and tried and tried to recruit them, but they would not.
Get involved.
And unfortunately, by me being so young and naive at the time, I can say now that they were afraid. But at that time, I was pretty upset with them because they would not get involved at all.
Were others in your family, or your parents or your siblings, were they involved?
My brother, he went to jail. He wasn't as active as I was, but he did go to jail because I told him he needed to march and, he needed to take a stand. And my mother and my great aunts and uncle, they all went to the mass meetings.
So you, in your family then, you didn't have people who were discouraging you?
Oh,
from
no,
getting
I
involved?
was really encouraged by my family. They really encouraged me.
What about teachers at your school?
Well, they kind of secretly kind of commended me. They couldn't do it openly because I guess they were afraid for their jobs and everything. But I had several teachers that would say, Danella, you're doing a good thing, and we're really proud of you.
Mm-hmm. So you were encouraged all throughout then to get involved.
Uh-huh.
That involvement, how do you think that impacted upon you as a person, that kind of involvement?
Well, I think personally it taught me about commitment, and it made me understand about race relations a lot, It helped me a lot in a lot of ways, When I moved to LA, when I first went to LA, I was pretty bitter, about certain things, but eventually I calmed down, and it helped me a lot. It really helped me a lot.
Why were you bitter?
Well, I guess I still had, because in LA I had befriended, well, it's racism everywhere, but to me at that time it was a little better than here. And when I was in school, I met some white girls, and they wanted to be my friends. I didn't particularly want to be their friends, but they seemed genuinely hurt by it, And then I started telling them what was going on in Birmingham, and they said something to me like, "Well, Danella, I don't have anything to do with that. I never lived in the South, and everything." So I soon changed, from that. I don't think I'm prejudiced.
What were the circumstances of your moving to Los Angeles?
Well, after my the last time I was in jail, which was in St. Augustine, my aunt, she flew in from Los Angeles to visit the family. And I had no idea that the family really wanted me to leave, to get away. They were beginning to get worried, especially after the bombing of the church. So I got out of jail, and my aunt took me to Los Angeles, which was in July '64.
You were actually in Birmingham when the 16th Street Church was bombed.
Oh, yes.
Can you explain what that meant to you at the time? What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember that, we had a lot of our meetings there. I didn't belong to that church. I wasn't a member, but I used to go there a lot. I had a lot of friends there, and, I liked the church. They were having something special, if I can remember, this particular Sunday. And I told my mother that I wanted to go to 16th Street Baptist Church to the Sunday school. So she said, well, fine, But I forgot to set my clock, and I overslept. If I can recall, my uncle ran in the living room and told my mom, I heard him say they just bombed 16th Street Baptist Church and some people were killed. I don't really remember what happened. All I remember, I was crying and screaming and carrying on, because I knew that some children were down there, some people were dead, and I would have been there too.
If you had not overslept, you
And
would have been
overslept.
at 16th Street that morning.
Yeah. So I think after that happened, my family kind of changed, as far as, they really wanted me to leave, so that was a sad day in everybody's life. It was really, really sad. Even when I first came back from LA and I went to 16th Street Baptist Church to look at it, it just brought all the memories back, so
So your
really
family,
sad day.
your family sent you to Los Angeles really for your protection,
Yes.
as far as they were concerned.
As far as they were really concerned.
Were there ever instances where, as a student, as a young student, that you was simply frightened of what you were involved in? Say the demonstrations or any of the other occurrences that happened. Were you ever just really afraid for your safety?
The only time I was afraid when that man put that gun in my head. Other than that, I can't say that I was. I wasn't afraid. All I could see was I wanted my freedom. I wanted the freedom for my people.
If you could turn the clock back, knowing what you know now, and you would go back through the movement, you had the ability to change any of the things that you went through, what would you change?
If I had the ability to change anything, first of all, I would tell everybody not to go to church that day. The church was bombed. That's the main thing. And
What about your activity? Would you change any of the things that you were actively involved in?
oh no, I would do everything exactly the same. I think it was just something that I was supposed to do. It's a very positive time in my life. And I'm proud of that.
How did that period then shape the rest of your life? Since you left Birmingham right out of high school, and you spent much of your adult life in Los Angeles, how did the experiences here in Birmingham help to shape you?
Well, it helped to shape me in a lot of ways. It made me a better person by, first of all, not doing anything wrong, because I never wanted to go to jail. So LA is a fast town. I stayed pretty much an Alabama girl in LA. It helped me with, as I said before, with race relations, with other races. I can intermingle with anyone with no problem. And it just made me understand about commitment and focusing on positive things and unity and the black community and how important that is to everyone.
You are now a member of the advisory committee for the Civil Rights Institute.
Yes, I am.
What things that have not been done at the Institute that you would like to see happen with that institution?
Well, one of the things I would like to, we're in the process, hopefully, of having a forum with young people from various schools all over the state of Alabama, and to bring to them what the young people in our era went through. And we're just trying to figure out exactly how we want to do that so that they will really listen, because this is a different day and age, and the kids are a lot different than they were 30 years ago. But I believe if they really understood exactly what our focus and our motives were, it can kind of blend in with what's going on today, and they'll be better able to deal with their lives.
Do you see that as being an ongoing activity or a one-time sort of occurrence?
Oh no, ongoing. Because the young people, that's our future. So we've got to invest in young people. We've got to.
Well, you have enlightened us today with all of the activities that you were involved in as a young person, and that's very commendable. I do remember, though, that you appeared in Life magazine.
Oh yes, I sure did.
What was the occasion?
Well, we had been marching. It was right across from the city jail, and we had stopped for prayer. Oh, they were spraying the hoses as usual. They had the dogs. Of course, I'd become accustomed to them by now. And I just fell to my knees and started praying to God because, no other help I know. I had no idea I was being photographed until James Bevel, Reverend Bevel, showed me the picture in Life magazine.
How did he show it to you? Were you at a meeting?
No, he came to my parents' home, and he had the magazine in his hand, and he just said casually, "I have something to show you, Danella." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Oh, that's me." He said, "Yeah." And that's how it came about.
You had any contact with any of the notable individuals that you knew then? Have you had any contact with them in recent years?
Well, we had a program last year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I talked with Andrew Young. Whenever he's in town, I usually get a chance to speak to him and Dorothy Cotton. I know them very well. I always tell my parents, I said, if y'all hadn't made me go to LA, I would have gone with Dorothy and Andy and still been involved actively. Mm-hmm.
So do you regret then having gone to LA?
A lot of times I do. I really do. But it was just my destiny. Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to add that we may not have touched upon today that you would like to share with the people that will read and view this?
No.
Thank you very much. You've been quite a help for us, and we will be in touch with you and allow you to view this as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet in the morning, oh Lord, it's sweet.